All right, so good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for today's college preparation session. Today we are talking about creating college culture in K-8. My name is Samantha Jackson, and I'm with Katherine Goldberg. We're both career readiness consultants with Kent ISD. And for those who aren't familiar, thank you, Catherine. For those who aren't familiar with what we do at the ISD and career readiness, each of us supports different districts. So on the left-hand side, you'll see the schools that each of us supports. If you're within the Kent ISD service area and you don't see yourself listed, please reach out. We definitely do support you. Um, our kind of big overarching goal is engaging in the K-12 career readiness planning process. We do that through providing professional development like this one, providing professional development within specific schools and districts related to college and career readiness, helping with EDP implementations, whether that's, maximizing your software or figuring out how to incorporate it into your daily lives, connecting industry to classroom, so bringing in guest speakers and taking students out on tours and connecting you to employers, and developing or finding career readiness resources. And I'm so sorry because I think I skipped a slide. So we're trying something a little bit different today. If you've been with us before, we do have a link for you to fill out for sketch credit. So Catherine just put that in the chat. There's a QR code up here as well if that's easier for you. And we will also share that again at the end, but that is the link for your sketch credit. Also, please make sure if you can to um, make your Zoom name identifiable. So if it says, just like guest, or if it's just a first name, please try to rename yourself something that we can identify it as we will still use your Zoom attendance to award your sketches. So fill out the form, but then also make sure your Zoom name is something that we can identify or recognize. Or if you don't know how to do that, go ahead and just put your name in the chat. All right, and again, we will share that link again at the end.
Samantha, we just had a bunch of people come on in. If you want to give a quick recap of that.
Yeah, we did just have a lot of people come in. So again, Catherine just shared that link for your sketch credit, and there's also a QR code up here for you. But we will award them based on your time in the Zoom room. So please make sure that your name is something easily identifiable, your first and last name. So either rename yourself or go ahead and throw your name in the chat just so we can make sure we know who is here.
If we are driving and cannot do that, can I just send an email with my Zoom link?
Yes, or you can just let us know your name.
It's Amy Zanowski.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We still have quite a few people coming in, so we will just keep letting we'll just keep the slide up for just a second just so folks can see it. So again, Catherine just put that link in the chat for sketch credit. So go ahead and fill that out. And then please also rename yourself or share your name in the chat so that we can tell who is here and make sure that you are awarded your sketch credit appropriately. And we'll make sure to share that a couple more times throughout just to make sure that we get everyone. We have a pretty big group today. All right, thank you, everyone. So again, feel free to rename yourself or put your name there in the chat. All right, Catherine, do you want to go forward now? Can you do one more click? All right, so for our kind of welcome and connection question today, we wanted to know, when did you first know you wanted to go to college and who inspired or encouraged you to go to college? So go ahead and feel free to throw that into the chat if you would like. You can also, again, share your name, you can share your grade level that you work with. When did you first know you wanted to go to college and who inspired or encouraged you? Feel free to share. We have lots of great answers. Yep, so a lot of parents, some friends encouraging. Don't really remember a specific time, it just was going to happen. Couple sports, college was expected. Yes, that was the only option. Yep, always assumed, lots of parents. Yes, how many people were teaching their stuffed animals or younger siblings? Well, lots of great responses. Yeah, I also was a first gen student and, for my parents, for sure, that was the only option was to go to college. But at the same time, I never really knew what college was because I hadn't seen it or, seen anyone do it before. Um, but I can remember, too, from a very early age that it was like an expectation that I was going to go to this whatever college was. Um, for me, I actually, recall the first person that really had an intentional conversation with me about college, was actually my ninth grade history social studies teacher, who is now the superintendent of that district. So I make sure to thank him for that. The first person to like really explain like what college was, how you got there, how you pay for it, all of the big things, just because I hadn't seen it before. Yes, Renee, I am sure you are not the only one in this room that taught their stuffed animals or younger siblings or cousins or. All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for sharing. All right, going over our agenda real quick for today, we're going to start off with some kind of facts and figures, just framing our conversation for the day. For those, if you did join us last year for this session, there will be elements of it that are similar, but there will also be some new components for you. But some facts and figures, then we'll jump into my school data, actually having you look at your information and how to use that, talk a little bit about EDPs for our middle school folks, and then doing an activity, some resources, and best practices to wrap us up.
All right. So I am going to kick us off with some facts and figures and just sort of lay the groundwork in terms of thinking about college and career kind of collectively, right? We know that these things are very intertwined, and it's a little bit of a chicken and an egg, whether you talk about career first or college or chicken. Anyway, all right, good morning. So I think for a lot of people, we think about this idea of this is so far away for a first grader, second grader, third grader, seventh grader, right? And I think for Samantha and I, as we were thinking about this session, we were thinking about this in terms of how can you have the longest roadway, the longest on-ramp for a student to be able to explore, to be able to become aware of opportunities, and then be able to prepare. So thinking about what are the labor market needs, thinking about what do students have interest in as well. Yes, it is far away, and we know that great actions come from lots of little steps along the way, and that each of you play a really instrumental part in that. So we think about also a lot of the developmental milestones and the developmental stages that students are at as we think about college and career. And that a lot of that really comes into the middle school period. And so if you are a K-5 educator or thinking about you are seeing the building blocks leading to a really pivotal point in a student's educational experience. And if you are in that 6 through 8 space, you are at that critical juncture. All of the challenges, all of the fun stuff that comes with that as well. But thinking a lot about how critical that middle school experience is. And then, like I mentioned, some of the labor market part is, yes, we want to follow what do students want, what do students have a desire and a passion and a curiosity, what lights them up, and what is available to them. What are the opportunities that are going to be there by the time that they graduate from high school? And 44 of Michigan's hot jobs, so those jobs that are high wage, high demand, are going to require some sort of education beyond high school, whether that is a 2-year degree, 4-year degree, certificate, apprenticeship, an additional sort of licenses and certifications. They're going to require something beyond high school. And so starting that conversation early to help them be able to make the informed decision. And as you can see, 74% require a bachelor's degree or higher. This is for the statewide hot jobs list. If you're not familiar with them, they are put out through our workforce development agencies, and you can also find regional ones, but this is the statewide stats. We know, we want students to know if there is a career that they are interested in and it requires post-secondary education, so that then they have the ability to make an informed decision. Then they have the ability to put the stepping stones in place that allows them to have access to that. And I think I mentioned this before, but our goal, our framework for thinking about this is that we want this work to allow students to feel confident in making an informed decision for life after high school. So it is less about you must go to a 4-year, you must go to a 2-year, less of that and more of what is it that you want to pursue and what is needed to make that happen? And where you are right now, what are the opportunities that are on the table for you? All right. So our framework and our orientation to this work is also starting with this idea of beginning with the end in mind. And so we need to think about what the end goal is so that at each step of the way, a student can be prepared. So you may also hear us talk a lot about what does it look like to be middle school ready? What does it look like to be ready to head into high school? And you may be like, well, that's not college or that's not career. But we think about it as the steps that they take in middle school prepare them to be ready for high school, prepare them to have the best high school experience, which then sets them up for the best opportunities. So thinking about that end goal and then backwards mapping from that. So here's another visual, another way to think about that, which is, okay, what are the skills, mindsets, behavior, or credentials that are needed for a student's ultimate goal? Which of those are going to be developed during post-secondary education? Which of them are going to be developed during high school? And then what foundations need to be in place to set up for success during the elementary or during the middle school experiences, so that then they have the success within high school, right? So I think about this from an example of thinking about, like, what do we most commonly hear students say right now that they want to be, right? Maybe a professional athlete, maybe a YouTuber, maybe an influencer, something like that. If we take that seriously just for a second and we say, okay, that's what you want to be, let's think about that YouTuber or influencer, right? What are the skills needed? They might need to have some finance skills. They may need to have some marketing. They're going to need to have strong verbal communication. They may want to have video editing. They may need to have some understanding of, like, Google Analytics and the advertising. And then they're going to need to have a unique or specific skill set to be able to then become the influencer or the YouTuber, right? So maybe it's lifestyle, maybe it's gaming, maybe it's music, maybe it's comedy, whatever, what have you. Those are all skills that need to be developed before they can reach that end goal. And some of those skills will be developed during high school. Some of those are going to be developed, can be developed through post-secondary education as well, right? In terms of mindsets or behaviors, they may need to have persistence, optimism, resilience to continue down that sort of unconventional path potentially, right? And then some training and credentials that could go along with it. So if we think about that finance piece, it could be courses in accounting, it could be coursework in that marketing, video editing, and some of the credentials that go along with that. So that's just one example of, let's take what they're interested in and then take that end goal, and then how can we break it down and within our sphere of influence be able to positively impact a student in that way. Samantha, anything else on that I might have missed? Cool. Okay. All right. So with that in mind, sort of with that idea of, like, what do you see and hear about career exploration? What do you think about career exploration and the value of post-secondary education? So this is, I want to give you a minute to reflect and think for yourself of, what are the messages that you see and hear about the value of post-secondary education? And then how does that compare or contrast with your thoughts and your feelings? So just take a moment to reflect personally, jot something down on your own paper. If you're someone that automatically jumps to the thoughts and the feelings, and that's easy for you, awesome. I'm going to push you to think about, what are the messages you see or hear about post-secondary education? And if you're somebody that's wrestling with I'm not sure about my thoughts or feelings, I encourage you to take the time to dig into, what are the messages that you're seeing? What are your reactions to those? When you hear things from students or families or staff, what are your reactions for those? All right. Is there anyone that would like to come off of mute or drop in the chat to share a little bit about their reflection to these questions. Seeing in the chat, like choosing something that's your dream, not the dream for others, right? That value of the lifelong learner. Thank you, Renee, for dropping in some of the messages that you see or hear as well. Yep. Sam, thank you for that. Very well articulated, better than I could have said it. Well-rounded skill development so that as our preferences change, we have adaptability. Yes, Sandra. I just want to echo, I think everybody is kind of, unsurprisingly, everybody is coming to kind of a similar consensus of, we know that this is a complex, multi-dimensional decision that is not as easy as go or don't go, trade or college, right? We know that there's a deep part of students doing some self-reflection, a deep part of understanding the barriers that may exist in their life and how they may want to overcome them. And I think also that there is a lot of opportunity, and with that can come some anxiety around the decision making, right? And whether or not it's worth it, and those kinds of feelings. So if you have a second, I encourage you, if we have a moment during today's conversation, to take a moment and read the chat. I think everybody has put in some really deep, rich reflections to it. And Samantha, it looks like you want to jump in?
Yeah, I just wanted to echo, I've seen a couple people mention this now, Laura, and I think Dean, it might be. Today we're talking about college in kind of the traditional sense, right? But really, when Catherine and I talk about post-secondary education, we're really looking at it from that expanded view, right? It's not just all about four-year college. A couple of people have mentioned just like the lifelong learning. So whether that happens in a four-year college program, whether it's a two-year program, whether it's a trade school or apprenticeship, we know that the high wage, high demand, stable careers are going to be those that require some type of post-secondary education, but that can come in various forms. So while today we're really kind of narrowing in on that kind of more traditional college lens, really, as we talk about this in general, it's the whole wider definition of it.
And then I think while we're kind of in this like laying the groundwork conversation part, the other piece, and I think this is the transition to where we are headed, is that the 2- and 4-year college process, we as a society have worked over the last number of years to make it more transparent, to make it more easily more easy to lead a student through that process. And I will just acknowledge that the apprenticeship or the trade school process is not always as transparent. Does not mean it is not as accessible, just means that it does not quite have as many systems and transparent processes in place. And I think the transition to that is we're going to talk about my school data, right? And looking at post-secondary enrollment. And I just want to put a disclaimer here, which is that as we look at post-secondary enrollment that the state collects, we really can only measure 2- and 4-year enrollment rates. So at this point in time, as far as I know, there is no system that tracks enrollment in an apprenticeship program or enrollment within military, right? We can go verbal, anecdotal reports from students, but we don't have that sort of secondary source to confirm where students ended up. So we are going to switch gears and we're going to look at some school data, but also want to acknowledge that we know this is not the full picture and that there are many incredibly valuable, incredibly meaningful career preparation experiences that will not be reflected in what we are about to look at. Okay, so we want to take a moment for you to be able to review the data that corresponds to your school district or to your school. And so as you head into this, I want you to think about this data as one element or one perspective in what students do, what students think, or what students feel related to post-secondary education. So what we are going to do is we are going to visit the parent dashboard of My School Data. Many other ways that you can get this data, but this is probably the most easily apples to apples way that we can all look at it together. So in a moment, you're going to open up this link, which we will drop in the chat. And then I want you to find the high school where students from your school typically matriculate. So if you have multiple high schools, pick one within your district, but you may need to think about, okay, what's the high school where students end up enrolling? And then you're going to find the post-secondary enrollment rate box. So in a second, I will show you this. So if you are here at the parent dashboard, I am going to just pick one random school right now. I swear if you are here from Rockford High School, this is no, all right. So you are here, you see a high school, and then as you go scroll down, you will see some indicators, and you will see on the left side the post-secondary enrollment chart. As you look at this, it will show you for the last 3 years. The green would be the school that you're looking at. Pink is a comparative school with similar student characteristics, and orange is the state of Michigan average. I'm going to give you a few minutes to be able to look at your school's data. I do just want to, if you are somebody who looks at this frequently, beautiful. If you want to get more into it and be able to disaggregate it, you can click into the green and then you can see student groups. So you could break it down by race, by gender, by finances, English learners, and then students with disabilities. So I'm going to go ahead and give you 5 minutes to take a look at this data. I will leave 2 reflection questions up. And I will check back in just about 4 minutes.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Okay, I wasn't sure if you could hear me. So I'm at the dashboard home and I search for my school, but it's only bringing up a map. What am I doing wrong?
Yeah, let's see.
So I just tried it for the high school that I went to, and I have found that some of them have official names that are different than what we might typically use. So like mine is whatever senior high school, for example. So try just the first word and see if that works.
Okay. Yeah, but right. Put it in there and it's just that.
The other part is sometimes there's a bit of a lag. So you may need to just put the name in and kind of let it sit for a second.
I know. I'd like information.
I can show you mine.
Okay, I have a colleague on the same webinar and she has hers somehow. So between the two of us, I'm good. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Beautiful, good teamwork. We've got about 1 more minute. All right, some people are starting to drop their reflections into the chat if you want to. Definitely welcome that. If you have not taken a moment to reflect on these questions, I encourage you to think about just gut reaction, right? What is your reaction to this data? Is this something you look at regularly? Is this surprising, right? And then is reviewing this data shifting your perspective at all? How, why, or why not? And I do want to, one mindset as you think about this is the data that we are looking at that I kind of led you to just in terms of post-secondary enrollment. That post-secondary enrollment data is one element of it. And we acknowledge that there's many of these other data pieces that are contributing to it or that play a factor in it, right? And so some of us might be starting to draw some conclusions or some hypotheses between attendance and enrollment or enrollment in advanced coursework, right? Just to give you some context nationally, in that 2020, 2021, and 2021, 2022 school years, so those first 2 years post-COVID, nationally, college enrollment rates were significantly lower. We did start to see some slight upswings last year to mitigate some of that drop-off. And then obviously, this year, if you've paid any attention to the FAFSA redos and the challenges that have come with the revised FAFSA, there are some concerns around enrollment this year. Yeah. So if you're noticing that your college enrollment rate seems to be down in the last 3 years or decreasing, that is consistent with national trends, but the world is always changing. So I want to just give you a minute to capture your thoughts on this, and then just encourage you to continue to dig into this data after today's session, right? If you did not get a chance to disaggregate your data or look at it based on some of those student identity characteristics, I strongly encourage you to, and think about sort of who are the students that are performing above our school's average or enrolling at rates above our school's average, and are there groups that are enrolling at rates lower than our school average, and then thinking about what are the steps I can take to impact that, right? All right. Okay. Samantha mentioned this earlier, but just to have a visual on this as we're talking about post-secondary education, we're talking about 2-year, 4-year, we're also talking about certificate programs, apprenticeships, and then also recognizing the deep value in some of those career opportunities with on-the-job training and the powerful post-secondary and career development that can come from the military as well, right? So just want to put that frame out there, and recognizing that there are multiple ways that a student could get to their ultimate goal. So I have a visual that we're going to kind of talk you through. And if you look at this and you're like, wow, this is crazy detailed, I encourage you to listen, take as much as you can from today's session, and then you will get the slides afterwards if you want to dig into this. So just want to have a visual anchor to the idea of there's many different ways to get to an end goal. So if you're working with a student and they say, I really want to be a nurse, right? They may think that there is one specific path to get to becoming a nurse, or their parent may think that there is one specific path to getting to be a nurse, but the reality is there are many. And part of that begins with the ultimate end goal, right? So you can be a nurse practitioner and have those advanced degrees, right? You could be a registered nurse at that bachelor's level, and you can also be an LPN. So just even when somebody says, I want to be a nurse, there's multiple ways to be able to get there, right? And so one way that a student might think that they need to get to become a nurse is, I do well in middle school, I do well in high school, maybe I take some courses at a local tech center related to healthcare, while I'm also taking some biology and some math courses that lead me to a 4-year school, to a bachelor's degree, to then become a registered nurse, right? So this is one pathway, maybe sort of that more traditional pathway that we think about. But there's also ways where students don't engage at the tech center, head to a 2-year school, get an associate's degree in nursing, and then are an LPN. Then maybe they get a job in a healthcare setting that supports them, and they go on to earn their bachelor's and become a registered nurse, right? And then it gets really complicated, right? So there's multiple ways to stack credentials along the way. And then we also want to acknowledge that, as we all talked about in the chat in the beginning, that the idea here is about that flexibility and about that ability to adapt and to be able to shift as our needs or as our wants shift as well. So I imagine we've all interacted with somebody who's like, you know, I thought I wanted to be a nurse, and then I learned about this other field. And as I got the tech center coursework, I realized I actually really want to be a surgical tech. Or I was thinking about it, and heading to college straight after high school wasn't going to work super well for me. I wanted to get a job as a surgical tech and then go back to school and become a nurse along the way, right? So each of these things are not mutually exclusive. There are pathways that may be clearer cut, but there is also the ability for students to be able to find what is needed for them at that time and be able to pursue it, right? So going back to that idea, our hope for today is about leaving you with the sense of it's about preparing students to feel confident in making an informed decision along the way. Samantha, go ahead.
Yeah, just to again, this idea that there's multiple pathways, a lot of times we'll hear, is it better for a student to take AP classes or to do KCTC or to like, which is the best option? And again, we're just trying to show that there are multiple pathways. We know, especially here in Kent County, but I imagine in other areas as well, our healthcare KCTC offerings at our tech center have a wait list miles long. And so there's a lot of concern about if a student can't get into these programs, like what can they do? But again, just showing that, yes, that is one avenue. And yes, it's a great way for them to see if it's something that they're really interested in, but it is not the only path, right? And just because they can't get into the nurse tech program doesn't mean that the medical assistant or the EMT or the whatever else program isn't just as viable to get them to that end goal. So again, just showing that there's no one right path for, every student. There are multiple ways for them to get there. It's okay for them to bounce around. I know in the chat I saw someone was talking about like how you're learning the skill to be able to make these changes later in life. We know that people change jobs and career paths multiple times typically throughout their lifespan. So, you know, they're learning little bits along the way through all of these different experiences that will help them get to whatever their end goal is. So whether that is actually becoming a nurse in some capacity, or like Catherine said, if it's coming over to here to another, healthcare field or something totally different. But there's just multiple correct paths for every student. There's no one right way.
Yeah, and I think before I hand it over to Samantha for our next phase of this, I think I hope that you hear the messages. How do we help prepare students for the next step, right? So it's not for all of the next steps, but for the next step on their journey. So if I'm at the elementary level, how can I help set them up so they have the foundations and skills and awareness to then be able to head into middle school and be super successful there, right? And then trusting and having that collaborative relationship with the next level up, and knowing that they have that same mindset and that same approach to then prepare the students for the next step along the way. All right, I will turn it over to Samantha.
Yes, so we're not going to spend too much time on this, but we do have to mention educational development plans for our middle school friends. So what is an EDP? The primary emphasis is to help students develop a statement of their career goals and a plan of action for reaching them. So it's not only becoming aware and exploring, what career they want, but also the post-secondary education or the steps that are required to achieve that goal. EDPs are required by the state of Michigan from Public Act 451. So this was 2018 legislation that defines specific requirements of an EDP and talent portfolio. So EDPs are required to be started, or an opportunity to start them, in 7th grade, and then to revise them every year after. And really though, we're just thinking about, the earlier that students start thinking about careers, the more time they have to prepare. So whether that's part of the official EDP process, or even earlier career exploration in elementary school, students can pursue things like career tech ed, early middle college programs, even thinking about course selection in like middle school, if they have, some elective classes that they can choose from, maybe they can choose things that are related to some of their career interests. In high school, they can pursue a personal curriculum where they can, swap out some of those required classes for things related to their career interests. And we're even just thinking, especially again here in Kent County, but I'm sure other places, a lot of students have older siblings or cousins that might have gone to something like the tech center. And yes, it's far away for a 4th or 5th grader, But again, you have to do well and build that foundation in elementary school in order to have a strong academic performance in middle school, in order to get to those opportunities in high school. So yes, it seems really far away for that student, but really just ingraining that idea of like high academic achievement and the tech center requires them to show up every day. So, stressing the importance of attendance and things like that, to make sure that they are prepared to then pursue those opportunities later. All right, so we are going to be wrapping up our time, kind of putting all of this information into action. So this morning I shared a Word doc version of this packet. Let me copy this here. But this is what we will be working with for the rest of today. So here is also a Google Doc version that will force you to make a copy. So you'll be able to write on it, have your own copy. So if you'd prefer that, you can definitely use that, or you can use the the Word doc version that I sent this morning. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be splitting up into 4 different groups based on which activity you choose. And we're going to give you a few minutes to kind of review each of them before we have you make your choices. So the first option you will have is to adapt a lesson plan that we found from the state of New York. And so it will have you look at college knowledge. And so you'll have time to look at the lesson and adapt it for your students or your needs. The second option you'll have is planning a family, college, and career awareness event. The third option is planning a week of maybe advisory slides or bell ringers related to college. And then the fourth option is perfecting your elevator pitch on the importance of making an informed post-secondary decision, which is kind of a mouthful, but really just how would you articulate the value of college to your stakeholders in your community? So we're going to give you a few minutes, I think about 5 minutes here, to take a look at those different options, make your decision. You don't have to start working yet. Then we will have you go into different breakout rooms based on the activity you selected. We'll give you some time to work on this yourself, so probably about 15 minutes or so, to kind of independently review it and work on what your plan would be. And then we'll have you share with the others in your room. And so actually we probably won't put you into your breakout rooms until after that review time. But we'll have you select the room that you want to go into to discuss. So first up, we're going to give you about 5 minutes here to review these 4 options and decide which one you want to take a look at. All right. I am going to throw that sketch link in the chat again one more time for anyone who hasn't seen that. We are just going to wrap up here with a few additional resources. We will kind of touch on this again in just a second in our wrap up. But just wanted to share some additional ideas. So our goal is always to give you an actionable thing, something you can work on that you can actually take back, hopefully, to your school or your district. And then these are kind of just more of like those one-off type things, but we wanted to share them as just some ideas. So broken down into 3 categories: environment, connections, and activities. So thinking about environment, even something as simple as hanging up college flags. So whether that's in your office, in your hallways, having teachers put it on their doors where they went to college, just, even for those elementary kiddos, especially here in Michigan, I think, some kids might know the schools that are close to them, or they might know like a favorite sports team, or they probably know Michigan and Michigan State. So, just getting some more variety, just having them see it, just to get familiar and get some awareness. Again, having teachers or staff share their education and their career pathways for students to get familiar with. In terms of connections, bringing in career speakers or panels, involving adults, involving your community members, whether that's parents, other important people to students, um, and making sure that they're sharing what, their kind of post-secondary education looked like. Bringing back high school students, or even those college students that came from your district to talk about what it is that they did. Um, Having campus visits. So we've heard from campuses in Michigan that they are willing to have elementary and middle school campus visits. They love getting kiddos on campus early and often, just to become familiar. And sometimes that just kind of helps make it more real for students, just to see it and feel it and smell it and all of that. Some activities. So, having a college and career week. That could be something even as basic as just having those advisory slides or having kind of bell ringers throughout a week where you're just, again, sharing, making it more, sharing that awareness. Having them do college and career research. Of course, this comes up in the EDP process, but even with our elementary kiddos, we can have them do some research on different things. Using it as a writing prompt. So if a student is doing like a compare and contrast essay, could they do it on 2 different colleges instead of, on another random topic? Having something quick in your announcements. So again, that could be part of a college and career week. It could just be periodically we're sharing information about college. March Madness or other things like that can be a really great time. Students get really excited about those types of things. They're hearing about it. But I think it was maybe Glinda who said that you went to, was it DePaul or DePaul? I think it was DePaul. Because
Yep.
of basketball, you saw basketball. So, having them get excited about that. I remember in elementary school, I thought I was a UNC fan because my dad liked UNC basketball. I didn't know anything about UNC, but like, could that be something that, if they're following March Madness or, other events like that, that we're just bringing it to the forefront. Doing a college bingo, so that could be combined with guest speakers or a career day. So no, maybe it's finding someone with a 2-year degree or someone who went to college in a different state or more than 2 hours away or something like that. So just, again, making it a little bit more interactive.
I also there was one comment that was in the chat before we jumped into the activity, which is sort of like, I feel all this stress and overwhelm, or I know that students feel stressed and overwhelmed as we talk about college or we talk about career. And so thinking about what are the other messages that you want to marry together with this, right? So are there ways that you can insert some messaging around feeling grounded or feeling confident or calm? Or embracing the unknown as you go through these connections and activities, right? So an example of that might be sharing teachers' education and career pathways, because that shows them that they don't need to have it all figured out right now, and that they might be able to change their career as they go on. So you're kind of weaving together that college and career with some of that social and emotional piece of things too.
Yes, for sure. So to kind of finish us out here, we wanted just one more chance for kind of reflection. So again, feel free to put this in the chat. Think about the activity that you just did. Think about other things that you've already done. So what have you already tried? What has worked well? What are maybe some areas of challenge or opportunity that you want to share with the group? So again, feel free to share those in the chat, or if anyone would like to come off mute, if a couple people want to share, I'd love to hear. And again, even thinking back to the activity you just did, is there anything from that that you feel like you can take and implement in your school, in your class, in your district?
I can share. So last year was my first year as a school counselor, and my school had never done a career fair. And so I decided to start that last year. I work in a K through 12 school. We're a very rural, tiny district. So the career fair was for the high schoolers, and then some of the presenters at the career fair volunteered to talk to some of the classrooms in the younger grades. And then this year we tried to expand it a little more, so then it became a career week. So I had like presenters coming to all grade levels throughout the week, and we had like a career spirit week, which was really fun. And I think it worked well, but I think my biggest challenge was that because we're in such a tiny district, I'm the only school counselor in the entire district. And so it's just a lot of planning for one person. And I was able to like get help in some areas from staff and students, but being in a small district, we all wear like multiple hats and lots of people are doing tons of things right now. And so even though it was really fun, I was pretty like burnt out by the end of the week. And so just trying to find ways that I can still do these kind of activities, but I don't know, it's just a lot for one person.
Thank you for sharing, Kayla. Yeah, absolutely. And so definitely trying to lean on others as we can. So remembering that while yes, this is part of the school counselor portfolio, college and career readiness work is really everyone's job, right? Like the whole point of school is to help prepare students for life, whatever happens next. And so, leaning on others, if you do, outside of Kent County, there are several other ISDs that also have consultants or, different support available. So leaning into those as you can, but also recognizing that, yes, it is a lot of work. Anything else anyone wants to share? Catherine threw an idea in the chat. There are some districts have tapped into parent volunteers, the Rotary Club, school board members for some of that outreach and relationships. Yes, definitely lots more responsibility placed on school counselors. Not enough time in the day to get all of the things done.
I'll throw one idea out there. When I work at an elementary school, and during COVID life, when we couldn't really go anywhere or have people in, we sent out a short guideline if parents wanted to send in a short video clip of their job and their career and where they worked. So that I got ones from, a dentist, and she was showing us her office and, kind of, I mean, you have to give them talking points, right? Like, why did you choose your field? What do you like about your field? And what kind of training do you have? Just like a 2-minute video. I had one man who showed us about being, I'm an industrial engineer. So the kids love seeing those videos. And I found that was kind of something I could reuse. So you're not reinventing it every year. And I just put them in a slide presentation and shared it out. So that's kind of a way I think to work smarter and not necessarily harder when it feels overwhelming. Just an idea.
Yes, I love that idea. And students get excited when it's people they know too, to see them, and it doesn't have to be anything fancy or professional. Love that. All right, we've got 1 minute left here. I did throw that sketch link into the chat one more time. Catherine will throw up our emails here. We do have one more PD, I think, left this year. It's the final one in our Career Readiness Network session. That one is in person in Grand Rapids. So if you're kind of local to the area, we encourage you to check that one out. It'll be in the PD hub. We can also send out a link with the recording, and the slides will include that information. And that one is really focused on helping you kind of kickstart your planning for next year. So again, really action oriented, trying to help with that planning. But thank you all so much for joining us today. Again, our emails are up here. Please feel free to reach out if there's anything we can do to help. We will send out this recording as well as the slides.
Thank you for taking the time on a busy morning.
Yes, thank you. And if you have any questions, feel free to throw those in the chat, or we'll stick around for a couple of minutes if anyone does have any questions.